Good morning. My name is Donald Campbell. I'm the chairman of the Bennington Select Board, and we are here today for a community update on the COVID-19 epidemic that this community is facing. We're in a very difficult time now. We know it's going to become more difficult, but we know this is a strong community and that we're going to get through this. One of the reasons for having this update is to help let people know that there are a lot of resources out there. This is not the last time we'll do this. We'll probably do it again next week on Monday the 6th, and we will keep doing it as long as it's useful to the community. So I'd like to ask the people that are on we're on the Zoom platform, which is a video teleconferencing. We are all at safe distances. We're in fact in our own little places. I am in my office, my barn office, in an old cream separator room where there used to stand a cream separator that my great-grandfather would separate the cream from the skim milk and store it in cream cans. But now it's my little office, and I'd like to let everybody else introduce themselves. Let's do Bill, Dan, Jeannie, Shannon.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Donald. This is Bill Colvin, the Assistant Director of the Bennington County Regional Commission. I think as most folks know, the Regional Planning Commission also serves as the capacity for the Regional Development Corporation, BCIC. So wearing both Regional Planning Commission, Regional Development Corporation hats. My location is not nearly as exciting or historic as Donald's, working out of the guest bedroom at my home in Bennington. So thank you for having me, Donald, and the community.
Yes, hi, this is Dan Monks. I'm the Assistant Town Manager, and I'm currently located in the west wing of the town office. We'll try to give you an update on measures that have been taken by the town relevant to public access to services, etc. Thank you.
Hi, this is Jeannie Jenkins. I am in my living room and I'm Vice Chair of the Select Board.
Hi, everyone. This is Shannon Barsati. I'm the Community Development Director for the town of Bennington, and I'm in a little study here at my home, and I'm going to be talking about some of the community resources that are coming together during COVID-19.
Great. Well, thank you very much for being with us, one and all. And I should have started out by thanking Cat TV for making this technologically possible. Not quite sure what we would do without you at this point, Cat TV, but thank you, Mike Cutler, and everybody else that does such great work there. As far as format goes, we're going to go through this in the following way. We're going to let Shannon go first and talk a little bit about what community resources are available, as she mentioned. Then Bill will take a shot at updating us on what resources might be available for businesses that are obviously in a very difficult situation right now. We'll ask Dan to update us on the measures the town's taking and some of the things that we may need to know that are coming down the pike there. And then Jeannie, who's very connected, one of the most sort of connected volunteer people, a serial volunteer in this community, I think she'll give us a little bit of an update on what's going on there. At the end, we're going to try to follow the Facebook Live feed. It's not we, it's me. I will try to track the Facebook Live feed and see if I can pull questions off of that. I'm not very handy at this. I will need to probably ask your forgiveness in advance, and I'll ask it again when the time comes. But if you have questions at the end of this presentation that are for the presenters about the topics that we've been, these people have been presenting, please put them up then, and I'll try to see if I can pull out some common threads. I may do some summarizing. This is not a public meeting. This is not a select board meeting, which is why we're able to do that. A select board meeting, we would not be able to have a feed like that without including the entire feed in the legal record. So that will come at the end, and I guess the first thing I mentioned is questions for presenters, and then the second thing, if there are pieces of information that you feel like you're not getting from the state or from the feds or from the town, and things that we could be bringing to you in this format, certainly bring them up at that point, and you're also welcome to call us and email us as needed. But at the end of this meeting, we'll have time on the Facebook Live feed. So, Shannon, if you're ready to kick things off, why don't we turn it over to you? And I'm going to mute myself and let you take it for a while.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. So I basically just been collating some of the resources that are out there. And, you know, as often happens in a crisis, as hard as this is, people are really rising to the occasion. And there's just so much good happening in the community. And there's probably a lot here that I don't know about. And part of the reason we're doing this too is to let people know where they can share resources. BCRC is doing a great job of really updating that list. So I'm just going to go through some slides here that I'll also share on the town website and Facebook page after this presentation. Let's see. Well, bear with me. I'm trying to find it was here. Hold on just a minute. Okay, can everyone can hear me? Okay. Here's some community resources during COVID-19. I have to move around to be able to see this. So as I mentioned, Bennington County Regional Commission, on their website, there's a list of resources that Allison Stroll is continually updating. So that's really one of the best places to find everything that we're going to be talking about today. Also, for out the guidelines, the health guidelines around COVID-19, I think that the Vermont Department of Health has done a great job. You can also, look at the larger sites like the Center for Disease Control, but our Vermont Department of Health has an updated list, as well as our local hospital, SVMC. And there's also a hotline that you can call for if you have more questions. Also, United Counseling Service has really been compiling resources for mental health, because this is a time that many people are going through a lot of anxiety. And so obviously it's difficult to not be able to meet in person, but there are a number of things that are online and hotlines as well. So I linked to UCS's website and their latest newsletter that goes through many of those resources, as well as the Turning Point Center in Bennington for online resources for people in recovery. Also, we have some pretty incredible collaboration happening for immediate food resources. As we talked about at the last select board meeting, the schools have just done an incredible job with the Abbey group to get food out to all of our children. And that's for kids who are in the public schools, private schools, homeschooling. Anyone under 18 is able to get the meals that are distributed through the buses. And that's the sites that I put up here. There's an overview of all of these food deliveries, as well as the food pantries and other deliveries such as Meals on Wheels. And there's also a link to the food assistance programs such as WIC. And those are kind of going through a lot of changes. So I'll put the latest update up on the town website today. I also just this morning saw a great guide for resources in an emergency for people with disabilities that was shared from Charlie Murphy from the Vermont Center for Independent Living. So that's a guide that's also going to be available. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Just wonder. Let me come here. Just sorry about that. Economic research, which Bill is going to be talking about, but we'll make sure to link to. Oh, my internet connect. I just got a message that my internet connection is unstable, so I apologize if anything gets weird. The Vermont Agency of Commerce and Community Development has continually updating their site about disaster planning and COVID-19 guidance for Vermont businesses, as well as our local chamber is looking at all of the resources that are available to our small businesses. The Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation has been doing weekly business resilience webinars that are really informative, especially as the federal aid package is now coming live, and there's a lot to understand about what's going to be available. And so they've been breaking that down for business owners as well as for nonprofits. The Vermont Department of Labor has also been working really hard to get resources available. They have an online application for unemployment insurance benefits, and there'll be more updates as well coming from them. And we'll probably hear from our local representative too, from the Vermont Department of Labor. The Vermont Small Business Development Center and the Small Business Administration are good places to find these resources as well. And I also, sorry about that. I just heard about some more resources for our nonprofits, because as we know, this is really very difficult for our small nonprofits and who are doing the direct work of serving the most vulnerable during this time, as well as our arts and cultural organizations. This is very, very difficult. And I know that some of these loans from the Small Business Development Administration are going to be available for nonprofits. That some of them will also be forgivable loans, depending on the size and the staffing of nonprofits. And the Vermont Community Foundation is putting together a COVID-19 response fund that is also going to be there to support nonprofits. So these are some resources I just put together as a parent, because I know we're all struggling right now with how to, kind of keep our kids busy as they're out of school and keep them learning. So one of the organizations that I think does a really great job in Vermont is called Come Alive Outside. And they have activities to do with your kids outside and inside that are creative and keep them busy. And Andrea Malinowski from Rise Vermont is going to be working with me. We were already working on Come Alive Outside passports for all school children as a way to promote outdoor recreation and to visit some of our local recreation sites. So we're still moving forward with that project, and we're looking at how we can get those passports out to all school children through some of either the meal delivery or packets that are going to be going home with kids from school. So those will be coming out soon. Also, I think a great organization that I use a lot as a parent is called Common Sense Media. So, for example, your kids are going to be on their devices more right now, but if you can look through what's some great media that's out there, what's for online learning, and Common Sense Media has a whole resource guide for parents, as well as 4-H, youth development. We know about local 4-H clubs, but they have some great online resources as well. And the YMCA is offering free exercise classes for people of all ages. And there's also a great guide to all of the virtual museum resources and online learning that are out there right now. So I found these helpful. The other thing that we wanted to include is just all of the opportunities right now for people to help, because that's what I'm hearing a lot of is people want to help and don't know the best way that they can help. So there's been an amazing organization that's come up out of this crisis, and it's called the Bennington County Mutual Aid Organization. They have a new website. It's a way that you can, if you have a need, you can look for help, and then if you're a volunteer that wants to help, you can be matched with a job. So that's a good place to start if you're looking for ways that you can help your community. One of the things that they're going to be working on, and I just got this list from Dane Whitman, is to match folks to call seniors who are at home so that they can have conversations and learn about ways that they can get the support that they need during this time. There's also a lot of need with our local food pantries, so donating non-perishable food to our local food pantries, such as Kitchen Cupboard and his pantry. Also, the other need for volunteers is delivery of meals to seniors. So Meals on Wheels is incredibly busy right now. They've really had to step up all of the good work that they do, and they need help. So I included their phone number as well. And then the Senior Phone Tree Project was started by a community member, and that's going to be part of the Bennington County Mutual Aid website as well. Another thing that you can do is this is the time to start your garden. So growing an extra row of produce to donate to local food pantries would be a great way to help out and get more fresh food to the local community. So that's going to be coordinated by some of our local farmers, as well as Bennington College is looking at hiring someone to help coordinate that project as well. And then, of course, supporting local restaurants and businesses right now by ordering takeout. Most restaurants are still open and able to do takeout and curbside pickup. And then buying gift certificates as well is a way to support our businesses. The Bennington Farmers Market is still active and has responded creatively to the crisis. And you can pre-order boxes of food for pickup from the farmers market. And I included that link as well. Also, another need right now is donating blood to American Red Cross, organizing a cleanup on April 2nd. And this is still safe. It's really an important need right now. So if you're interested in helping out, that's a good way to do it.
Shannon,
also donating.
Shannon, your vocals just kicked out there for a minute. Would you be able to repeat that, please?
Sure. I just have a link there about one important need right now is donating blood. It's something that is really needed. It's safe. The American Red Cross is doing a blood drive coming up on April 2nd at SVMC. So there's more information. Also, as we all have heard about, the need for supplies for protective equipment for healthcare workers. So contractors who have N95 masks they can be donated to SVMC, to the Bennington Rescue Squad as well. And there's also an initiative right now of to sew masks to help support the reusable cloth masks that can be given to all of our healthcare workers as well. So that's the list that I have right now. And as I said, I'm sure there's more, but there's a lot happening and it's in flux. But there's some great work happening in the community.
Shannon, that's for sure. There is so much happening out there. I think it's hard for people to keep track of a little bit, and that's part of why we had hoped to get some highlights from you folks so people can know where to go. Even with your summary, I think it may be a lot for people to remember. So would you be willing just to say again where you're going to put all this stuff and how people can most easily access it?
Sure. I'm going to put it up on the Town of Bennington website. I'll make sure to coordinate with the BCRC. The Bennington County Regional Commission has a list so that we both are up to date, and on the Town of Bennington's Facebook page.
That's great. Thank you very much. And this might be a good segue to you, Bill, but it's my understanding that the Regional Commission we're using the Regional Commission as sort of the information hub at this point. That yes, we're putting stuff up on the town website. Yes, we're trying to get it out wherever we can, but that most entities are using the Regional Commission, at least in Bennington County, as the primary source. Have we got that right?
Certainly, a lot of them are. If you go to the main BCRC page, you'll see right at the top a button to take you to the COVID-19 resources. That's a specific link that Shannon has noted in hers. We are updating that list regularly, multiple times. I know there have been at least 4 updates this morning into the business and economic resources section. There are other sections for personal resources and the like. So it's as current as we can possibly make it. Allison Stroll in our office is really doing yeoman's work and getting the links and getting them posted as quickly as possible. So
that's great.
That as real time as possible. Certainly everything I talk about with regard to business resources this morning is linked on our site, in addition to some of the more specific sites that Shannon referenced. But if you want to use the BCRC site, again, the COVID-19 page as a basis for jumping off to most of the resources that Shannon just referenced, and certainly all of the resources that I am about to reference with regard to business support, that's a pretty good place to start. So taking that with everybody's permission, and thank you, Shannon, for the overview of community resources. Wanted to drill down a little more specifically into help that is out there and more on the way for businesses. Certainly, we all understand and appreciate the incredible hit the business community and local economy is taking as a result of the pandemic. People are scrambling at all levels of government, as well as in the not-for-profit sector and private sector, to try to assist in multiple ways. But I wanted to keep things as kind of high level and as simple as possible, with except a little bit of detail about some lending programs that are beginning to emerge. As Donald and Shannon both referenced, the federal package number 3, COVID-3, which is most commonly referred to as the CARES program, passed Congress and was signed by the president on Friday. Details are emerging again hourly on assistance coming out of those programs. There were 2 additional COVID assistance related packages passed earlier by Congress, COVID-1 and COVID-2. There is also some additional business support in each of those packages, but primarily the CARES package, the most recent package, is where you'll see a lot of support for businesses. And again, those details are changing regularly. But let me talk about 4 kind of general categories of business support, questions that we've been fielding, certainly in our office. Myself and Jonathan Cooper, who I think many people know, works with me on BCRC and BCIC initiatives in community and economic development. As you might imagine, the business community is frightened. They're anxious. They're also looking for ways to step up and support the state and the community. So in general, the 4 categories, I think, where we're looking for business support or resources are around unemployment, taxes, the identification of what manufacturers can do to support the effort, as well as what constitutes an essential business. There have been a lot of questions around that. And then, of course, lending and grant type programs. So let me just talk briefly about each of those 4 categories. I think many people have seen a number of changes in the unemployment insurance realm that are coming about. Again, those things are changing. The Vermont rules have not yet been written. The legislature is meeting mostly remotely at this point and really looking to tackle the unemployment situation within Vermont and then layering on the federal program, which was just passed on top of that. So in addition to the legislature trying to navigate a new way of working, they're also trying to navigate a 30-plus-year-old unemployment insurance system and trying to bring that current and make it fit a situation, frankly, that I'm pretty confident nobody who will view this program has ever faced in their lifetime. So some high-level changes with regard to unemployment. Again, without going into great detail, waiting periods have been waived for unemployment insurance if it's a COVID-19 related reduction in force or lessening in hours that are being worked. There's also no search requirement necessary to secure unemployment, again, in COVID-related cases. And I think probably the biggest change, and one that will be of greatest interest to our small business owners, is extending uninsured employment benefits to self-employed, independent contractors, and those working within the gig economy. So that's new. That is also exists at the federal level. I can tell you that the Vermont Department of Labor is working very hard to try to figure out exactly how to engage with that component of the population. Again, it's not a component of the population that has traditionally been eligible for unemployment benefits in our state. So Interim Commissioner Michael Harrington, good friend of all of ours, has been working very hard with his staff to try to figure out that component. I think the other significant thing that most people are probably aware of by now is that through the end of July, there is an additional $600 a week federal benefit, which will be layered on top of whatever the state unemployment benefit is. And again, that was part of the CARES Act. And again, it's a little unclear at this point exactly how that will be rolled out, either direct payments from the federal government, or if that is going to be layered on and flow through with the state unemployment check. The average state unemployment check in Vermont is about $335. The maximum is $511, and that depends upon obviously your work history, your salary, existing salary, and the like. But let's take that $335 average salary. The $600 federal payment would be layered. $335 benefit. The $600 benefit would be layered on top of that to create a weekly $935 benefit. And again, that will exist through the end of July. So those are kind of high-level changes with regard to unemployment. With regard to taxes, I think from a business perspective, although this is also true of personal, there has been a delay in the requirement of the payment of filing of corporate income taxes until July 15th. I think people are also aware that also has extended to personal income tax. The state of Vermont is requesting that, to the extent possible, businesses continue to file paperwork for rooms and meals tax and sales and use tax. However, penalties and interest on not paying those at this point has been waived for the immediate future. So, to the extent possible, they're asking that those filings be made. If payment cannot be made, there is no penalty or interest on that. And then, in addition, on the tax front, there is a federal program which is emerging, which is an employment retention tax credit, which would be a credit against future Social Security payroll tax up to $10,000 for businesses that are retaining employment throughout this challenge, and businesses that have experienced a 50% or greater reduction in revenues from over Q1 or Q2 in 2019 in the most recent quarter. So those are some of the high-level tax changes. All of the tax department guidance and updates, again, are available on the BCRC site. Moving on to kind of the identification of essential and critical businesses. With Governor Scott's order last Tuesday, which basically shut down all non-essential businesses as of last Wednesday at 5 p.m., there was a mad scramble, as you might imagine, throughout the state to try to identify what constitutes a critical or essential business. State Agency of Commerce and Community Development was originally fielding those responses, as soon as the order came out, they were getting up to 70 calls a minute to identify what constitutes a critical business. That quickly became overwhelming. So the Agency of Commerce has created an essential and critical business listing based on industry code, what's referred to as a NAICS code. You find your industry code and it will pretty much determine whether your business is considered essential or not. That NAICS code, Essential Business List, is also on the BCRC website for your reference. So I'm assuming most of those questions now, 5 days later, have probably been answered, but if there's still questions there, please refer to the NAICS code. If there are further questions there is a link to make outreach to the Agency of Commerce and Community Development for assistance in identification of essential status. And then finally, we have been working with primarily a manufacturing sector. Shannon noted the call for N95 masks, and we've been working with our local employer contingent to identify the availability of existing masks. We also have been working with state level departments and associations to identify any potential additional manufacturing capacity within our region to produce either personal protective equipment or parts or for ventilators. So a number of our regional businesses have stepped up and identified the opportunity to support those causes as well. So that's been certainly been a component of our work. We certainly understand cash flow is trickling into non-existent for a number of our businesses. There are a number of lending programs which have come to bear primarily through this, again, most recent stimulus package, the CARES package, or COVID-3, which passed on Friday. I'm going to highlight kind of 3 big federal programs and then just talk briefly about an emerging state program. So I think the 3 big programs that existed at the federal level in the CARES package are what is called the PPP, or Paycheck Protection Program. That is a program which is where loans are made through local SBA approved lenders to businesses that maintain their payroll through the pandemic. Kind of high level comment of key facts related to the PPP are there no fees for establishing this loan. Has a 4% maximum interest rate. And I think of interest primarily to the businesses with whom I've engaged late last week and very much so over the weekend. There is a forgiveness provision as a component of that loan for 8 weeks of most payroll costs, again, provided you maintain certain payroll thresholds with regard to the number of employees that you continue to pay, as well as the rate at which you pay them, again, not reducing their pay. So up to 8 weeks of payroll can be forgiven for that loan. It just gets wiped off the loan, and the federal government actually pays the local institution for that. The maximum loan there is 250% of your average monthly payroll based on payroll a year ago. More recently, if you weren't in business a year, up to $10 million. So I don't think that number impacts most of our regional employers. But again, 250% of average payroll there with a 4% max and that forgiveness provision, which is pretty significant. For those who have existing SBA loans, 7A loans or 504 loans or micro loans, those are non-disaster loans which may have existed prior to the pandemic. There is a 6-month payment by the federal government of principal, interest, and fees for those loans, which is going to be made available to existing borrowers. You may also apply for new loans in each of those categories. Again, microloans, 7A loans, and 504 loans. Those are little broader categories for business uses. The Paycheck Protection Program is specifically for use in payroll and payroll-related expenses during the term of the pandemic. The other major SBA category is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. That is a loan program directly through the SBA. I think the key provision in here, and again, that loan is primarily, it's for operating expenses and payroll expenses throughout the disaster. A maximum $2 million loan there. That loan, if you have already taken one out, because that came out as part of an earlier package, can be refinanced or added to a a paycheck protection loan, as long as the proceeds aren't being used for the same purpose. One key provision there is an automatic $10,000 advance if you request it when you apply for an EIDL loan. So $10,000 would be automatically advanced to you within 3 days by the SBA as soon as that application comes in. And that $10,000 advance does not need to be repaid even if your loan is not approved. So that's another way for a possible short-term injection of cash into the business. And then finally, the Vermont Economic Development Authority, VEDA, is working on creation of its own Vermont-based lending program. It has to work through the legislature to do this, and as I noted, things are evolving rapidly up there. We are having 3 times a week calls with the regional development corporations and our legislative representatives and lobbyists for the RDCs to try to stay up to date. I'm getting 10 to 15 emails a day regarding various committee meetings and things that are happening in the legislature. So things are happening quickly there, but VEDA is looking to set up a Vermont-based lending program. They're hoping to have it very low interest, perhaps as low as 1%. There are no details on that yet, but it hopes to be forthcoming. So again, that's really high level and kind of the 4 categories of assistance in which we've been engaged. On our website under Economic and Business Resources, which is one of the sections, which we're updating again regularly, multiple times a day, you will see our local contact for the Vermont Small Business Development Center. Vermont SBDC is a component of the Federal Small Business Administration, and the SBA is really encouraging small businesses to work through their SBDC advisors to the extent possible. Our local advisor is Nancy Shuttleworth. Her contact information, again, is highlighted prominently on our website. So if you're looking to navigate any of these programs related to the SBA or just general business counseling about what you should do next with regard to cash flow, I would encourage you to reach out to Nancy. Additional resources were approved in the CARES package to get additional boots on the ground for SBDC. So I expect there will be additional advisors available in the very near term to assist as well. And then finally, this is longer picture, but BCRC has already engaged with the EDA, the Economic Development Administration, and FEMA about recovery coming out of the back end once the pandemic is over, specifically focused on business recovery. We are engaging in that process. I expect there will be significant resources once those skies brighten and we're looking at coming out of this. We understand the recovery for businesses nationally and certainly here in the region is likely to be a longer arc, and we are already engaged with trying to bring additional resources to bear to assist in that longer term recovery process as well. So again, that evolves and we will stay active there. The EDA has reached back out to us and has our Vermont representative has said by far Southern Vermont is the most engaged portion of Vermont in this with the EDA, bar none. So we're trying to stay active there and on top of things to the degree possible. So thanks very much, Donald, and be happy to answer whatever questions may come my way at the end of this.
Thank you very much, Bill. I know there's a lot kind of going on, and a lot of this is in progress. So we appreciate you giving us the interim report, and look forward a lot to where this ends up going. Yeah. So there are a few questions kind of trickling in, but I'd love to try to get through a little bit more if we could, and take questions at the end with what time we have. So hang in there, and we'll get back to you. Thank you very much. Dan, would love to hear from the town and hear what's going on. Any report you have to give us, I think, will be helpful. But knowing that there's only so many things we can do, we're waiting for the state and the feds to sort a lot of these things out. This town still has a role, and of course, you and I talk every day about what's happening. But if you'd be willing to give people an update on both what has happened, I think, but to the extent you can, what you see kind of coming on the horizon in the fairly near term. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Donald. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So obviously our challenge is to continue to provide essential services while protecting our employees and the public. I can report that as of now, all of our essential services we're able to continue to provide those: water, sewer, public safety, and the police department, and the fire department, and keeping the roads safe and open. All of that, we continue to be able to do that. We have not suffered significant staff reductions yet from COVID-19 that would challenge our ability to provide those services. We also have done a detailed inventory of all the essential and critical supplies that we need to continue to provide those services. And as of right now, we are in pretty good shape. We've inventoried everything. I will say that it will continue to be a challenge to procure personal protective equipment for the PD and for our wastewater folks going forward. But so far, so good. And obviously, cleaning and disinfecting supplies are a challenge. But we have so far been able to maintain sufficient inventory to keep providing the services necessary and essential for this community. So that is good news for now. Hopefully that will continue. As far as most of what I'm going to say will be updates to or just reiterating things we've done in the past, but I do have one new update that will be going out today. We have decided to close playgrounds, basketball courts, tennis courts, etc., on all of our facilities to protect folks from the COVID-19 pandemic. Signs will be going up today, and we will not be opening the restrooms at Willow Park until further notice. We do encourage folks to use our public parks for walking as long as they maintain proper social and physical distancing practices. We do recognize that those facilities are important to serve that function for folks getting out and recreating safely during this time. The senior center and the rec center remain closed. The town offices, as well as all other town buildings, are closed to the public. We do have a skeleton crew in the town office, and we do have skeleton crews in the water, sewer, and DPW facilities doing essential services. We will be evaluating daily. In fact, we're looking very closely today on whether or not we should be reducing staffing even further than we have in order to comply with the governor's order. And we will be making some determinations in the next couple of days about that particular issue. As you know, all public meetings remain canceled. The select board will be continue to meet by Zoom, thanks to Donald's work on that. Obviously, we continue to implement our cleaning and disinfectant protocols in all facilities that remain occupied with employees. I mentioned earlier that we have gone to skeleton crews. Our workforce has been shifts have been staggered, and folks have been asked to stay home using their personal leave time so that we can be as safe as possible in our workplaces. We've also modified some workplaces to ensure that there's appropriate physical distancing during work hours and in their workspace, and also in break areas, etc. Of course, all of our employees, to those that are working, have been counseled and the supervisor enforcing proper physical and social distancing and hand washing, etc. And as far as facilities being wiped down and cleaned regularly. And it goes without saying that no one who is sick is allowed to come to work. All of those folks are required to stay home. Luckily, our workforce has not been hit too hard as of yet with illness. The other, I think that does covers most of what the town's measures are. Again, the next thing that we'll be looking at carefully is whether or not we need to reduce or can reduce our workforce even further, yet still provide those essential services, because we want to make sure that we keep people as safe as we possibly can, but understanding that we can't just shut the water off or stop treating wastewater or stop the police department from doing their good work. So I think that will wrap it up for me, Donald, unless there are any questions from you or Jeannie at this time. I'd be happy to answer. And I know that there'll be questions coming in from the public later as well.
There will be, I think, questions coming in, but it feels like we shouldn't go on too much further without asking you just to explain a little bit more about why you're staggering the workforce in terms of, maybe it's self-evident, but this notion of having enough capacity once people do start getting sick, if you'd be willing just to talk a little bit about that. So this isn't a vacation time. This is trying to keep people in reserve, right?
Right. So the idea is if employees become sick on a certain shift, staggered shift, that we'll be able to have recruits from another shift to come in. If everybody's working all together at the same time, it's much more likely that they'll all get sick at the same time. So we're trying to keep employees separate as much as possible, not just by social distancing while they're working, but also staggering their shifts so that they're not working all at the same time to the extent possible. And I will say that the employees have been incredibly receptive to this. They've been very helpful in using their own leave time to make this happen. As this drags on, we may have to reevaluate, but so far, folks have been very, very accommodating, and we've been able to keep most of the workforce pretty separate so that we don't see a large amount of illness spreading through the same population of workers. So that's the reason for doing that.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think probably most people get that, but without a working water department, without a working sewer department, without government, we would be in some big trouble here. So thank you very much for making some hard calls on that. We did hear from the police department, of course, at our last select board meeting, as well as a few other people, but we may want to hear from them again as time goes on. There'll be a couple more questions. I've got some questions for you already, Dan, that are coming in, but I'm going to hold them to the end. Jeannie, why don't you, if you'd be willing to talk for a little bit about some of the volunteer things that are going on. And while you do that, I'm going to remind people that are on following this on Facebook Live that if you have questions for the presenters, besides the ones that have already been posed, or if there are areas of information you feel that need to get pushed out, that we could use our position here to try to get more information out to people, what would that information be? Who do we need to talk to? How can we help? How can we be in service? So throw that out there for you Facebook Live people. And Jeannie, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about volunteerism and all the things that you know about, which is would take a long time, but maybe a summary of what people are doing and how people can engage would be great. Thank you.
Well, actually, I thought what I'd do is just give a couple of examples of things that are going on, because I think the collaboration is pretty remarkable, and it really does speak to not only the business community but also the nonprofit community that really goes above and beyond in making sure that that this community is as well prepared as we can be. So one thing that happened this week was, I'm sure we all saw in the paper, the CDC instructors' great initiative to start making using 3D printers to make masks. And it turns out that independently, Hell Mountain Research had also started a project in that. And at this point, we've reached out to all of the public and private schools and colleges in the county to see who has 3D printers and who might be willing to engage in a project. James Salerno has been involved has been contacting the state and making sure that whatever they're producing is something that the hospitals and other front row people that need protective gear can use. And it's just a really nice way of looking at a public-private partnership and doing something for the common good. I think earlier Shannon mentioned Meals on Wheels, and I think that there has been an amazing amount of rallying around that organization. Meals on Wheels has really stepped up to an enormous demand for their services, and this has allowed or required them to really think about how to restructure what they're doing. So instead of having their volunteers go out several times a week, they are doing frozen meals and delivering them one day a week, but they've staggered those days so that Bennington is day A and Arlington would be day B, Pownell would be day C, so that they are using their human resources as well as they can. This has meant that they have been producing a lot more meals, and so that they needed more freezers. So they reached out, and the town immediately went in and made sure that they could accommodate, the wiring was going to be okay, and they could accommodate more freezers. The community stepped up and has donated for the duration freezers to Meals on Wheels so that they can store more of their food. Andrea Malinowski at Rise Vermont has been incredible in making sure that food is flowing throughout the county and that people know where to get food. She, through Veggie Van Go, donated all the extra food from the delivery last week to Meals on Wheels, which then meant that Meals on Wheels had enough potatoes and carrots and sweet potatoes to feed a lot of people. And that meant that the mutual aid, the Bennington County Mutual Aid Group, put out a call for people who were willing to sit outside on 6 feet apart in a parking lot and peel potatoes, sweet potatoes, white potatoes, and carrots for a couple hours for a couple different days, and help them out so that they could make all the meals that they needed to. And then finally, Green Mountain Express, which has really stepped up as well, is taking the food, so food that's needed in neighboring communities. Green Mountain Express is driving the food up to Arlington, for instance, where the volunteers unload it and then can drive it to people in that community that need it. They're doing this for Pownell. So they have really stepped up as well. And I think it's a really nice example of how the whole community is coming together to make sure that the resources that are so essential to us are being met. So those two for me really do sort of give a sense of how we are all coming together. We have at present close to 50 individuals in emergency housing and motels throughout the county. The motels have been really gracious. Over 10 motels are serving vulnerable populations. And again, Green Mountain Express is going to each one of those motels and making sure that individuals that are housed there can get to both grocery stores and food pantries so that they have what they need. I think the community is really stepping up, and it shows how wonderful we are, and I'm really thankful for all that. So I'll stop there, Donald.
Okay, Jeannie, great. Thank you very much. This is obviously another work in progress, but the people in our community that are most vulnerable are the people that are going to be, unfortunately, hit the hardest by this. And so we need to make every effort to continue to work in all different ways to try to help out. So I have a couple of questions that have come in over over this feed. Again, I'm not very good at this, but I'm going to try to summarize things. Dan, I have a couple for you. I think I might ask you a couple in a row here, and then I might switch to Bill. But at the very beginning of the feed, one person asked about Stu and how he's doing, and is he still in self-quarantine, and a little update on him.
Sure. So we expect Stuart back on Friday, this Friday, assuming that he doesn't develop any symptoms. He doesn't have any symptoms as of now, is healthy. So, most of the information we get is that if he were to have contracted the COVID-19, he would have symptoms by now. So we're hopeful that he'll be back on Friday.
Great, thanks. I think another question, and this is posed in a couple of different ways, but it's a good question. Probably a lot of people are wondering this, is what about, and this may be out of your, this may not be something you're quite qualified to answer, so I'll throw it to all of you if any of you have a good answer. But what about contractors at this point? What about people who need a plumber? What about people who need a painter or a carpenter? What's the, is there a test for sort of how important that is to be able to get somebody out? Do you know anything about that?
Well, Donald, that as Bill mentioned, the ACCD did put out some guidance that basically home residential construction and renovation is not permitted at this time. Obviously, if your sink is overflowing and you're having problems with your plumbing, that's an emergency issue. But if you're wanting to add a new bathroom or something like that, that's not something that's considered essential at this time. So yeah, I think it really depends upon whether it's a reaction for an emergency, either electrical or plumbing matter. But if you'd plan to do a renovation to your house or do an addition to your house, unfortunately, that's on hold.
That's great. Thank you for that answer. The third one for you, Dan, and just a question: are there any town projects that were underway that are now on hold as a result of this? Are there any particular efforts? Of course, it seems like a lot of things are on hold right now, but is there anything you'd want to highlight in that category?
I guess that we will not be beginning any new construction projects until further notice. It's been made pretty clear that we're not to begin anything new. We'll only be doing, to the extent that we feel it's appropriate, maintenance, keeping the roads open, keeping them well drained and safe. But there won't be any significant new projects commencing anytime soon. I wouldn't imagine.
I want to apologize for, you may be hearing some background noise off of my feed. The trucks go by Route 9 here with their Jake brakes on sometimes. So if you hear a rattling, that's what's going on outside my office. Thank you for that, Dan. Bill, one question that was posed is, are there any local businesses that have had to close as a result of the COVID-19 thing that you know of at this point?
Well, so obviously all non-essential businesses should be shut down at this point. Exactly, enumerating those is not, I can't do at this point, but certainly all non-essential businesses have shut down. Several of our manufacturers have shut down on a temporary basis as well. If you're looking for longer term, we've heard of nobody at any business size that does not, at least at this point, intend to reopen coming out the back end of this.
Okay, I think that was the intent of the question: is are there manufacturing or other businesses that we know of that have closed their doors permanently as a result of this? And it sounds like none known at this point. So that's
not at this point, but just to follow up. I mean, I think we have to be preparing ourselves that is certainly a possibility. I think it was going to be challenging situations for all businesses. Not looking to be alarmist, but I think being realistic, I think we need to expect that some businesses probably will not reopen coming out the back end of this. But in terms of anything at this point or who those might be, there's no notice whatsoever.
Thank you. Bill, another question that you may be able to answer, though this is really a Department of Labor question, but this is probably a question that we all should have an answer to. And Shannon, you may be able to help out with this some too. I know that, Bennington's own Michael Harrington has been burning up the waves. I feel like every time you turn around, he's on a podcast or a news program or something. And we're, of course, very proud to have him up there doing that. And it does sound like a very complicated thing right now. in terms of who can apply for unemployment insurance, but the question's been posed: can self-employed, non-essential business owners file for unemployment now? And it feels to me like that is, I don't know exactly what the answer to that.
The answer is yes. It's at some level. Basically, at this point, there are very few people who are not eligible for some type of unemployment insurance. Exactly how that works, Michael has said repeatedly, Michael Harrington, there are 2 hotlines set up for the Department of Labor. You can also file an initial claim online. Although if you're self-employed, an independent contractor working in the gig economy, the suggestion is to call one of the hotlines. A counselor will walk you through your eligibility. Please be patient. As you might imagine, they've added a second line. The lines are overwhelmed. They've added hours. Please try back. The best advice is to call DOL and get a counselor to work with you through your eligibility and how to go about making your initial claim.
And of course, DOL is Department of Labor. There's also an intake form that can be done. If you're familiar with this, you can do the intake form online. You don't have to talk to somebody. You can do that first step online, and then they're now setting it up so you can actually put your weekly hours in either by phone or in some other way too. So I'm not sure of all those details, but Jeannie, maybe we could flag this as something we might want to catch up with Wendy on, or bring somebody in that has a little more expertise on this next week.
I think so. And I did talk with Wendy yesterday, and there will be town hall style meetings for small business owners and workers, and also at least one session for people that are self-employed. They're hoping to be able to announce when those will be before the end of this week.
Okay, that's great. Let's see. There were a couple of questions about the tests at the hospital. I'm not sure this crew is going to know what the situation of tests at the hospital are. I have not heard that they're out of tests, although there's some chatter about that on the Facebook Live feed. I just don't have that information. Does anybody else have any information on what's going on at the hospital? No? Okay. So we did hear from them at our last select board meeting. It sounds like they were prepared for all this, but I guess we can't answer that one question. I'm sorry about that. We'll try to get back on that. Another question revolved around, getting outside and exercising. That's still very much supported by the state, despite the recommendation that we all self-isolate. I think exercise is more important now than ever, and the town would encourage that, using, as Dan mentioned, using the safe practices. So this is a little bit of a hard question. I'm not sure. Again, this may be a Department of Labor thing, but a request, if one of us could clarify the $600 unemployment thing that you mentioned, Bill. When does it take effect? Our local branch is unaware as of 15 minutes ago. Do you have any more on that you could share?
Again, I think that passed late Friday. The president signed it Friday evening. I think guidance and rulemaking around that and how that's going to be deployed. I expect we will know sometime this week, but we don't know it yet.
So I'm not seeing too much on the Facebook feed. I think we've covered just about most of the questions that are on there, but I am a little bit interested to know what this group thinks would be helpful to try to pull together for next week. Department of Labor seems like it maybe floats up to the surface. Are there other entities you feel like would be helpful?
It might be nice to have someone from the hospital or the health department come back and just give us an update.
I don't know if this should be for the next meeting, but I know that the schools are going to be rolling out some online learning initiatives. So maybe before that happens, that would be helpful to share with folks.
Okay, so we've got a couple notes there. Dan, one more question kind of struggling in for you here. Is it possible to speak a little bit more about how playground will be closed? Is it just closing of the bathrooms, or will the equipment become inaccessible? What are the details of the playground closings, if you've got any?
Sure. So, for instance, the basketball courts will be tying the nets up so that they will be unusable. We won't be putting out the swings for the swing sets, and we'll be signing and, to the extent possible, cordoning off the playground areas from use. Obviously, we're not going to have the police out there, telling people they can't use the playground equipment, but we're going to urge people not to, because that's a possible way to spread the disease with kids gathering and playing on the playground equipment. As I mentioned before, there's nothing wrong. In fact, we encourage people to use the parks to walk, jog, whatever is appropriate, as long as they can stay safely distant from other folks that are using the facility. It's the playground equipment itself, basketball courts, tennis courts, where people have to actually be close together and are touching surfaces that could spread the disease. That's what we're trying to stop.
That's great. Thanks very much. Well, I think it's probably time to wrap this up. We, I do think we'd be remiss if we didn't at least do a little bit of a shout out to our federal representatives who are really working hard to bring a lot of money to Vermont. They're working very hard. Our state reps also are working to make a lot of change. I know it's very difficult circumstances, remote voting and all that stuff. So we are very thankful to them. It might be nice if we could get one of our senators to come onto the program next week too, and give us an update on what's going on at the state level. And certainly very thankful to the town staff. I know you're working under very difficult conditions, and the police department working under very difficult conditions, but all doing a good job. And Bill, your crew, doing what we can to kind of keep the economy going during these incredibly unprecedented, difficult times. But we are going to get through this, and it's going to take a while. It's not going to be a 2-week deal. It's going to be a multi-month deal, but we're going to get through it, and we'll get through it together. So thank you, Cat TV, for hosting us today. Thank you, everybody, for being on. And
Donald, can I just say one last thing?
Put you on next. We'll get on next Monday. We don't know what time. It would depend on who we're getting on, but we'll make sure to push that out through the scheduling channels and Cat TV. So,
Donald, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just Mike here from Cat TV, just to let everyone know to keep watching our Facebook page and our channels for updates from the hospital when we have more lunch and learns with the chamber or more other entities such as the educational outlet, and of course these Zoom meetings that we're having. So just to keep everyone aware that we're trying to get the messaging out there any way we can. So if anyone has anything they want to get in touch with us, feel free to do so via our Facebook page or sending us an email at info@countylaccess.com.
That's great. Thanks, Mike. And before we log off, I guess I would ask all of you, Bill, Shannon, Jeannie, Dan, any last thoughts or anything that either inspired you or that you think we should be concerned about, or that you'd like to say, or just should we log off and call it a day? Nothing?
I'll just say, it really, to echo what Jeannie said, it's been inspiring to see what a caring community that we have and how people really are rallying together. And on the note of, I guess, one silver lining of this is it has been nice to see so many people outside with their kids taking walks. It's a great time if you can do that. Spring is here and get out on the trails, not on the playgrounds. If you go to the town's website under recreation, there's some great maps of our local trail system. So get out and walk.
And Donald, I would just say thank you to our business community. They're working very hard right now, one, to try to play a role in recovery and support, and two, in being very creative in how they try to navigate the economic situation, giving the various orders and challenges that are facing them now. So I know we understand the importance of our business community. I know we're doing things, as Shannon suggested, to try to support them. in the short term. My hope is, and my expectation is as well, that when we come out of the back end of that, we will understand more perhaps than ever how important our local businesses are to us as a community, and we'll do everything we can to support them. So thanks to them for everything they're doing during this time.
Beautifully said, Bill. That's so important, and they need our support, both moral and financial, now more than ever. Dan or Jeannie, anything from you?
Donald, I just want to, recognize the services that, especially the police department, are doing through this difficult time. I'm sure they all would like to be home with their families, safe from the COVID-19 pandemic, but they're on the front lines and continuing to do their job, and they've been continue to be very dedicated to the town and the community. So I think a special thank you to them.
Great, thank you very much. Jeannie just logged out. Either her internet dropped her or she pushed end meeting instead of unmute. I'm not sure which. Could have been either. We're all just getting used to this technology. A couple of people on the Facebook Live feed have sort of complimented us on that, which seems for which we're so grateful, because at least I feel like a real hack at this, but trying to do the best we can here. I guess my last word is, Shannon, I know you're a sheep farmer, but we had our first set of lambs this weekend, and we were so pleased to have two little lambs come out and be healthy and running around, and those sheep just don't know anything about what's happening, and it's really a joy to know that nature keeps going and that other things keep going. We humans have to kind of work this out, but it is all going to work out, and we'll keep pushing through. So thank you for joining us, everybody. I'm going to end the meeting now, but we'll be in touch, and we'll get one scheduled for next week.